The text came while I was locking up the shop. One photo. My fiancée in a gray hoodie. My brother's arm around her waist. And in the mirror behind them, one bed. I knew that room. Same hotel off Route 11 where we stopped last spring to get new tires. I stared at the picture for a long moment. Then I got in my truck and started driving. No music. No calls. Just the sound of the engine and my own breathing. The parking lot was half lit when I pulled in. Cold air cut through my jacket. The smell of fryer oil from the diner nearby hung in the wind. I walked past the soda machine, up a set of metal stairs that rattled under my boots. Room 212. The chain on the door slid when it opened a few inches. Then his face appeared. My brother. Eyes wide like a kid caught in a lie. Behind him, she stood with damp hair, holding my t-shirt like it belonged to her. He tried to smile. "It's not what you think," she whispered. "Evan, please?" I didn't step inside. Didn't ask for details. I looked at both of them and asked one question. "Yours?" They froze. That silence was my answer. He reached out like he was going to put a hand on my shoulder. I stepped back. "Don't." I walked down the stairs slowly, every step echoing. The wind hit harder at the bottom. For a moment I just stood there, breathing in the cold. When I got in my truck, my eyes landed on the passenger seat. An envelope. Payroll papers. And inside, a letter I'd written days ago. It wasn't meant for this. But right now, it felt like it was written for exactly this moment. It was one page. A revocation of my brother's authority over our company bank accounts, vendor contracts, and client deals. Something I had the right to sign, because I was the majority owner. I thought about what that signature would do. No access to company funds. No credit through our business name. No ability to move a single dollar without me. My phone buzzed. A friend had sent me more proof. Screenshots. Dates. Messages from holidays, even the week Dad was in surgery. I didn't reply. Didn't drive home. Instead, I turned toward the office. The building was dark when I arrived. I unlocked the door, walked straight to my desk, and pulled out the letter. The pen was already there. The signature line was empty. I sat down and held the pen over the paper. One stroke of ink and his world would change. I clicked the pen. And I asked myself, have you ever watched your own brother turn into a stranger? You don't feel the knife when it's slow. You only feel the space it leaves. 2 months before the hotel, I noticed a $1,482 charge on our company card. The note said consulting dinner. 3 nights in a row at the same place. I asked him about it. He laughed and said, client hospitality. A week later, the client told me they hadn't met with him in months. 6 months earlier, our landlord called about late warehouse rent. I was confused. We'd never missed before. Caleb brushed it off, then bought himself a new watch for optics. I paid the late fees quietly. He posted a picture of the watch on Instagram. A year ago, I sat at my kitchen table drafting our operating agreement. It included a buy-sell clause. If either partner committed misconduct that hurt the company's reputation, the other could force a buyout at book value, minus penalties. He signed it without reading the fine print. Said, "You're the numbers guy. I trust you." When we opened the business account, the bank manager asked if we wanted dual signatures for outgoing wires. Caleb rolled his eyes. "Do we look like we're going to steal from each other?" I told her yes, we needed dual signatures. And I kept 60% ownership, because I put up most of the $63,500 startup cash. People say I overplan. They don't know what it costs to rebuild your life from nothing. They don't know how carefully you read contracts. When you sign loan papers at 24. And every dollar means something. So when I left that hotel parking lot, I didn't need to invent a plan. I already had one built. At 1:12 a.m. I emailed our bank rep. Per attached, please remove Caleb Foster's authority effective immediately. I'll be in at 8:15 to execute account changes. I attached the signed revocation letter and the agreement. I didn't sleep. I poured coffee into a styrofoam cup in the break room. At 7:58 I was in the truck. At 8:15 I was in front of the bank manager. She looked concerned. "Is everything okay?" I said, "We'll keep it professional." She slid the papers over. I signed them. Ink dried in seconds. She asked, "Do you want a temporary freeze during the transition?" "Yes," I said. Everything paused until I moved funds to a new account. By 8:30 it was done. His access was gone. Every account frozen. Every door closed. I walked out into the morning air knowing the real impact hadn't even begun. Voicemail, 8:31 a.m. "Bro, what are you doing? My card just got declined at Chevron. Call me back." We can work this out. Caleb. Voicemail, 9:02 a.m. Evan, I made a mistake. Please don't blow up our lives. Just call me. Her. Voicemail, 9:10 a.m. Mr. Foster, confirming we've processed the revocation. Pending transactions are halted. We've also started an internal review of flagged personal expenses. Bank rep. Voicemail, 9:44 a.m. Sweetheart, your brother's here at the house. He says there's a big misunderstanding. Why don't you come over for lunch and talk it out? Mom. Voicemail, 10:15 a.m. Got your note about taking over as the sole contact. Honestly, we prefer it. Send over your new banking info for payments. Client Ridge Roofing. Voicemail, 11:32 a.m. You froze payroll? We have installers on site right now. This is insane. You're going to bury us both. Caleb. Voicemail, 12:05 p.m. Nancy Webb here. Your clause is enforceable. If he used company funds for that relationship, we can classify it as misuse. I can get you in front of a judge by Friday. Bring statements and documentation. Attorney. Voicemail, 12:51 p.m. I'm at your apartment. Your landlord says you gave notice. Where are you? Please, just talk to me. Her. Voicemail, 1:20 p.m. He's crying, Evan. Says you're going to ruin him. You two have been through so much. Sit down together and work this out. Mom. Voicemail, 2:40 p.m. You think you're clean? Who kept sales going while you hid in the office? You can't run this without me. Caleb. Voicemail, 3:03 p.m. Hearing set for Friday morning. Bring the screenshots, the statements, and the operating agreement. I'll draft the misconduct notice and injunction request today. Nancy. I played each message twice. Wrote down numbers. Printed card statements. March, $276 at Bayview Inn. May, $321 at Bayview Inn. August, $409 at Bayview Inn. Every one labeled client dinner. Every one a lie. I didn't feel rage. Not the kind people expect. It was a calm hallway walk. One door after another, closing. At 5:15 I sent payroll from the new account so the crew got paid. Attached a short note. Operations continue. New email for job tickets effective today. Then I left the office, drove to a small month-to-month rental off the highway. $1,100 a month. No leash traps. The manager handed me the key. Quiet building, she said. I nodded. Quiet was all I wanted. Friday morning came fast. Small county courtroom. Fluorescent lights buzzing above. The judge sat with a coffee mug that read World's Okayest Boss. Nancy, my attorney, was calm as ever. Caleb walked in wearing a suit that didn't quite fit. Beside him, a local lawyer who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. My ex-fiancée slipped into the back row, sunglasses on. Nancy spoke first. Your Honor, the operating agreement includes a buy-sell clause triggered by misconduct harming company reputation or finances. We have documented misuse of company funds for personal travel and lodging. This misconduct also created conflicts with clients. We request operational control and enforcement of the buy-sell penalty. She handed over bank statements, screenshots, client emails. The judge scanned them quietly. Caleb's lawyer tried to shift it. This is a personal matter, not a business one. The judge lifted one statement. Client dinner, at Bayview Inn, multiple dates, no actual meetings? His gaze moved to Caleb. It's family, Caleb said. We can fix this. Nancy didn't raise her voice. He paid the SBA note alone. He owns 60%. He froze accounts to protect payroll. This is about integrity, not feelings. The judge nodded. Enough to protect the business while this is resolved. He signed the temporary order. Full operational control to me. Exclusive banking authority. Immediate valuation for the buy-sell clause. In the hallway, Caleb stepped close. You really want to ruin me? I looked at him. I want the company clean. By the end of that week, the valuation came back. The penalty clause cut his share to $1. I signed the transfer papers. The clerk stamped them without ceremony. One signature. And everything that had been ours was now mine alone. I handed Nancy her retainer check, $8,700. Worth every cent. Walking back to my truck, I didn't feel victory. I just felt done. He taught me how to throw a baseball in the backyard. Said, keep your elbow high. Trust me. I was 8. He was 13. At 16 I fixed his car. New plugs, new belt. He handed me a cold soda and said, you're the best. I kept that bottle cap for years. When Dad broke his hip, we traded shifts at the hospital. I took nights. He took mornings. A nurse said, "You're good sons." I believed her. On my 23rd birthday, he gave me a pen with our initials engraved. "For the day we sign something big," he said. I used that pen when we started the company. There were signs though. He'd ask me to delete certain client emails, to keep the peace. I refused. He called me uptight. I called it careful. My fiancée once suggested he join us at the lake. He backed out last minute. She still went to see her aunt. That Monday he was oddly soft with me. "You know I love you, right?" I nodded and changed the subject. "We grew up counting coupons. That's why I saved everything, why I put rules in place." He called me paranoid. I called it protecting what we built. Looking back, the worst wasn't the hotel. It was Thanksgiving 2 years ago. The two of them laughing at a joke I wasn't in on. I told myself it was nothing. Now I see it for what it was. I laid all these fragments out in my head like tools on a workbench. Not to hold on to anger, but to understand. When you see the pattern, you stop trying to fix what's broken. You build something new. That week, I changed every company password. Issued new employee badges. Drafted a short message to the crew. No secrets. No shortcuts. We win by showing up. I signed it with the pen he'd given me. Then I left the pen in a drawer. 2 weeks later, Logan, one of our youngest installers, asked if we could talk after hours. He's 20. Lives with his mom. Plays bass at a church downtown. We sat on milk crates behind the shop. He said, "I heard about your brother. If that happened to me, I'd burn everything down." I shook my head. That's for movies. Real life's different. Real life needs rent paid. He told me about his own brother. Borrowed his car. Wrecked it. Blamed him for not changing the tires. Still comes over for dinner like nothing happened. "Feels like I can't get even," he said. "You don't get even," I told him. "You get clear." He frowned. "Clear?" "Write everything down. Keep your word. When someone breaks theirs, you hold up the paper. You don't scream. You don't threaten. You just sign what protects you, and walk away." He thought about that for a second. Feels small. It feels small until the bank moves or the judge signs or the client calls you first instead of them. Then it feels like breathing again. The next day, I met with our biggest client, a developer putting up townhomes near the river. He asked, "Is your shop stable?" I slid payroll records and clean schedules across the table. Didn't mention Caleb. Didn't mention the hotel. Just said, "We pay our people on time. And we show up." He looked over the papers, then shook my hand. "I'm moving all my maintenance work to you alone." I left without smiling. Went straight to buy new safety harnesses for the crew. Paid a vendor $2,640 Caleb had left hanging for months. Wrote on the check, "Paid. Thank you for your patience." Logan saw me pin the receipt to the board. "That what clear looks like?" he asked. "Close enough," I said. In a small town, you don't have to push a story. It moves on its own. 2 weeks after the court order, Caleb's name came off the truck doors. The paint was barely dry before the whispers started. A supplier called to confirm an order. When I told them Caleb was no longer with the company, the man on the other end paused. "Yeah, we heard." Then came the job rejections. He'd applied for a sales position at a building supply store. The HR rep called one of our clients for a reference. The client didn't hold back. Missed meetings. Padded expenses. Not dependable. No drama. Just facts. That's all it took. The bank sent him a letter. His account privileges were removed. Personal charges were flagged for reimbursement. The SBA lender emailed me about a line of credit Caleb had applied for in the spring. I wrote back, "Not proceeding. He is no longer an officer." They replied, "Understood. Thank you for clarifying." One night, a text from him came through at 11:46 p.m. "You win. You always wanted me under your boot." I didn't reply. Instead, I scheduled a crew training for the next morning. We brought donuts, went over documentation rules, and set new procedures for every job. My ex-fiancée tried a different approach. A long message about therapy, about how love is complicated. I read it sitting in the truck on my lunch break. Then I archived it without answering. At church, I quietly stepped down from the couples group we had co-led. Told the treasurer, "I need a quiet season." He just said, "We're here if you need anything." The following week, a developer invited me to a networking breakfast. People shook my hand, asked about the business. Not one person asked about my brother. It was like he'd been erased. Logan, the young installer, noticed it too. "Feels like people are picking sides," he said. "They're not picking sides," I told him. They're remembering who shows up and who doesn't. I kept my focus there, on showing up. Invoices sent on time. Crew paid every Friday without delay. Calls returned the same day. By the end of the month, our revenue was up 12%. Caleb had become a ghost in his own town. Not because I chased him. Because the truth traveled without me. And I knew. The real ending was still coming. It happened on a Thursday morning. I was reviewing bids in the office when the phone rang. The voice on the other end was shaky. Evan, it's Caleb. He didn't waste time with small talk. I need work. Anything. I'll sweep floors, load trucks, just until I get back on my feet. For a moment, I didn't say anything. Not out of spite. I just thought about the hotel room, the statements, the messages. How they'd looked at me like I was the problem. I can't do that, I said quietly. This isn't personal. The crew deserves stability. I can't bring instability back in. There was a long silence. I heard him inhale like he was going to argue. But then, nothing. Just the click of the line ending. Later that week, I was invited to a local contractor's luncheon. I walked into the banquet hall and there he was. At a back table, head down, picking at his food. The chatter in the room moved right past him, like he wasn't even there. A client from across the table leaned over and asked, "Hey Evan, you taking on any new accounts? We've got a big project coming up." I smiled and said, "Let's talk after lunch." It wasn't loud. It wasn't public humiliation. But in that moment, it was clear to everyone in the room who was building, and who had burned it all down. I didn't gloat. Didn't glance his way again. I just kept talking business. 2 days later, Logan came by my office. He handed me a coffee and said, "You ever think you'd see him like that?" I shook my head. No. But it's not about seeing him fall. It's about knowing I can stand without him. The company kept growing. We landed the riverfront maintenance contract. Hired 2 more crew members. Paid off the SBA loan 6 months early. Every so often I'd hear his name. Someone mentioning he'd applied for work, or that he was trying to start a small side gig. But the thing about a small town is, people remember. I never spoke badly about him. I didn't need to. The facts had already spoken. And that signature, that one clean, deliberate signature, had done everything I needed it to. I walked away with my business intact, my reputation solid, and my life quieter than it had been in years. Some endings don't need noise. Just truth. And the space to let it settle.